know what you're feeling today. But I do hope this is the first step in providing what closure the criminal justice system can. You've waited nearly 50 years for this, and I also must acknowledge those who have fought alongside you for the answers. I would like to recognize retired Lieutenant Steve Gibbs, who's here with us today in the back. He was with the Marion County Sheriff's Office at the time, who started looking into this cold case in 1990 and then again in 2003. Gibbs was instrumental in locating case documents and preserving them, which laid the foundation for Sergeant Ellison and Sergeant Dave Ellison, who recently retired from IMPD Unsolved Homicide Unit, worked to secure funding necessary and ultimately led us to an answer, which brought us all here today. This breakthrough demonstrates the power of science, perseverance, and never-ending pursuit of truth. This investigation demonstrates the commitment of our Unsolved Homicide Unit, which is formerly known as Cold Case, investigators to bring justice to victims, families, no matter how much time has passed. It demonstrates our commitment to justice and the key role the Unsolved Homicide Unit plays. My message today: if you commit a crime in Indianapolis, we are going to hold you accountable, no matter how long it takes. While we would like to do this immediately, this may take years, but we never stop looking for answers. I'm now happy to turn it over to Sergeant Dave Ellison, who never stopped looking for those answers, who will briefly give you a rundown of the case.
Good morning. My name is David Ellison. As it was mentioned, I'm recently retired after 35 years and 13 years in the Unsolved Homicide Unit. I'd like to thank Chief Bailey, Chief Adams, Captain Spurgeon, the Unsolved Homicide Unit for allowing me to participate today and help bring closure to our survivors here. I want to briefly go over the facts and what got us to this point. It was back on August 19th, 1975, that Sherry, who was 11 years old, Candy 13, and Kathy 14, walked to the bonded gas station on East Washington Street, which was on the far east side. They made some purchases, left the gas station, went out onto the street. They decided they were going to hitchhike and go to Post Road. While they were doing that, a white male driving a station wagon stopped his vehicle to give them a ride. He instructed them all three to get into the front seat. As they left and proceeded to Post Road, Kathy, who was seated next to the driver, noticed that he wasn't stopping. She pointed out to him that it was Post Road, their stop, and he seemed to accelerate and kept going. He continued on US 40 towards Greenfield and past Cumberland, continued out just past the National Drive-In, where he stopped and turned around. Now, while he was doing that, Kathy was becoming upset. She told one of the girls to try to get out of the car. When one of the girls went to reach for the door handle, it had been removed and they could not get out. Kathy tried to hit the brake pedal, but her leg was not long enough, so she was unsuccessful. It was at that time that the suspect pulled out a handgun, put it to her head, and threatened to shoot her. As a result, they were totally complying at that point. He turned his vehicle around, heading back westbound on US 40 to 700 West, where he turned north. He went down a little bit, found a farmer's lane, drove back the lane to a cornfield, found an open spot, and parked. At that point, he instructed one of the girls to get out of the car. While he bound the other two, the girl was taken to the front of the car where she was sexually assaulted. She was then stabbed repeatedly. The throat was cut. He then went back to the other two girls that he had bound and gagged and got them out of the car and proceeded to stab them as well, leaving them for dead. They actually played dead to try to avoid being stabbed anymore. He eventually leaves and flees the area. Kathy and Candy managed to make their way out of the cornfield, make their way to US 40, where cars are going past. Eventually one stops. It was Gary McCormick and Victor Parsons. Victor was going to be here today, but something came up suddenly and he couldn't make it. I'm sorry. I know you were looking forward to seeing him. They both got help. They got the police and they got medics. The police got into the cornfield and quickly found Sherry and got her life-saving aid. They were all transported to the hospital. Sherry was in critical. Candy and Kathy were in serious condition. Obviously, they're here today. They all survived. The investigation involved multiple jurisdictions. It started in Marion County. It went to Hancock County. As a result, those two agencies were the primary. Indiana State Police supported, as well as the Indianapolis Police Department. Police agencies diligently worked the case, collecting evidence from the crime scene, conducting interviews, responding to tips from the public, and following up on leads on several different possible suspects. However, the case eventually went cold and no arrests were made. Over the years, our survivors made contact with the police department, periodically checking for any new developments. Then we fast forward to 2018, and that's when I met Kathy. I was actually walking through the hallway. Kathy was in the hallway, and one of our chiefs at the time, Chief McCart, asked if I could help Kathy. I spoke to her. We went into our conference room. She explained what happened to her. I could see how traumatic it was at the time and how it had impacted their life forward. I asked if she could get the other two ladies to come in and we'd sit down and talk. That eventually occurred, and while talking to them, it was just very sad what happened to them. So, of course, I said I would try to help. I explained my primary responsibilities, which are dealing with unsolved homicides, and that it would require patience on their part, because I couldn't just drop everything and work this case. I would work on it on free time whenever I could. And they agreed with that. When you think about an unsolved homicide or cold case, it presents many challenges. The older the case, the more challenges that exist. First thing you want to do is find a file. So locating it is not always as easy as it may seem. Witnesses that existed when an incident occurred often may not still be around. Police officers may not be around. Medical personnel. All these things are important and critical to any criminal prosecution. So as you're doing your investigation, you're hoping that all those exist, but there's always roadblocks. Fortunately, Lieutenant Steve Gibbs looked at this in 1990 and 2003. And it was his work that helped me. It laid a foundation for me to go forward. I know Steve's here, so Steve, thank you for what you did. In 2019, evidence was located, and it was at Hancock County Sheriff's Department. Evidence was transported to the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department, and after reviewing items, started targeting items that I thought had probative value to possibly produce a DNA profile. We started putting items in increments. During 2020, more items were put in. And basically, you're then waiting for results. And I'm working on other cases. I have trials. We're digging for bodies. A lot was going on in 2020. 2021, we began looking at an original suspect that was in the case. And then later, we were notified by the Marion County Forensic Services Agency that one of the items had produced a DNA profile of an unknown male. That was in 2021. Additionally, we had submitted more items. 2 more items revealed DNA from an unknown male profile. All 3 of those male profiles matched each other, and one of the items had Sherry Rottler's DNA on it. It was at that point that we knew we had our suspect's DNA. The lab is responsible for passing along the information and the DNA sample that ultimately gets uploaded to the state laboratory, Indiana State Police, and then if it meets certain requirements, it'll go to a program that's called CODIS. CODIS is an acronym. It stands for Combined DNA Index System. It is a criminal justice program, and it is maintained by the FBI. So after our profile got put into CODIS, we weren't getting any results which we had hoped for. That tells us 2 things. Either our person didn't do anything else ever, or he's deceased, or he was locked up before the CODIS program started. So his DNA was never taken. The suspect, the original suspect, was deceased. An additional suspect we had identified on our own was also deceased. We identified family members. We went to them, explained what was going on. Both families were great. They cooperated, provided DNA samples, which allowed us to eliminate those suspects. In January of 23, I reached out to DNA Laboratories, DNA Labs International of Florida. They have genetic genealogy completed for a suspect profile. Funding for this testing was provided by a community partner, Audio Chuck, Season of Justice, and that's Ashley Flowers over here on the far side. We're so thankful for the money you provided to help us. Thank you. I also want to, is anybody here from DNA Labs? Yeah, Steve, yeah. Steve was instrumental. He's helped us before in situations getting funding. And Steve, thanks for your efforts. Thanks for the liaison with Ashley and DNA Labs. Appreciate it. We also wouldn't be here today without both of them. Last year, the genealogist at DNA Labs International used websites such as FamilyTree.com, GEDmatch.com, and DNA of the suspect to identify ancestors and, most importantly, a daughter and a son of the suspect. Sergeant Columbus Ricks and Detective Chuck Benner of the Unsolved Homicide Unit followed up on the suspected children. Both of these individuals were very cooperative. They identified their father and provided DNA samples for comparison. As a result of that testing by DNA Labs International this past December, they were able to confirm the match between the suspect DNA and the daughter and the son. The suspect has been identified as Thomas Edward Williams, born May 21st, 1934 in Indianapolis, Indiana. He died November 13th, 1983 in prison in Galveston, Texas. That's also where he's buried. Cold case investigators were able to link Thomas Edward Williams to Indianapolis during that general time period, and at one point living not far from the abduction location. 6 years ago, Kathy, Sherry, and Candace approached me about this case, and I promised I would do my best to get them answers they deserved. So I want to thank you for your patience and mostly your persistence, never giving up, never trying to hold the police department accountable to help get answers for you. This was an act of evil that none of you deserved. I hope today brings you some sort of closure, knowing that your attacker has been identified and he's no longer in this world. The Unsolved Homicide Unit in the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department is honored to be able to have helped bring closure.
Thank you.
I'll now turn it over to Kathy, Sherry, and Candy.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Kathy Rottler. I'm joined here with my sister Sherry and our friend Candace. Hi. Hi. 48 years ago, on August 19th, 1975, our lives were changed forever and we became survivors. By the grace of God, there were 3 men that stopped to help me and Candace after the attack. I'd like to take a moment to thank them today and recognize everything they did. It was Victor and Philip Parsons and Gary McCormick, which Philip and Gary have passed on. It was because of their help and their decision to stop the car and assist us that we are here today. Soon after our case went cold and I tried to keep the case open, but it seemed every call I made was met with another dead end. Then in the late 1990s, I got a call from Lieutenant Steve Gibbs, who is now retired, and I'd like to thank him for trying to solve our case, even coming back from retirement to continue to work on it. That too came to an end, but I was determined not to That too came to an end, but I was determined not to give up, and a few years I can't read this. A few years went by before I contacted the cold case unit again. It was after that exchange that David began to keep me informed on what was happening with our case. Even after he retired, he has kept in touch with me until we got here today. I want to thank all the investigators who worked on this case, some who are in this room, many who are not. I also need to acknowledge my family who has been by my side the entire time. That includes my sisters and children who are here with me today, and my mom and sister who have passed on, and my father who could not be here today. I stand here before you today as a survivor who has learned the true meaning of patience. I've learned that sometimes the answer you are waiting for can take decades to get, nearly 5 decades in fact. But I feel it's all on God's time and it was well worth the wait. There were times over the past 48 years that I felt no one was working on this case, but I kept hoping and praying, and I'm so glad that I kept my faith in myself. I'm so glad I kept faith in myself and investigators. My messages to other survivors out there is never give up and continue to fight to keep your case open. This is a day I never thought would come, but I told myself to keep going and never to stop searching for answers. Today we got our answers, and I'm so thankful for that. I'd like to turn it over to Steve from DNA Labs International. Thank you.
I have something to say, and I'm Sherry. I'm very thankful to everyone for your help. But I also want to indicate that I do forgive this man. I had to in order to continue to live my life. So I hope that anybody who's in this situation can please do the same, because that's what God wants you to do. I forgive you. What was his name again?
I'm not going to say his name again.
Okay. Well, I forgive the man, and I thank the children. Thomas Edward Williams, you are forgiven. And I'm sorry if that makes anybody mad, but that's in their heart.
Hi everyone, I'm Steve Du Bois from DNA Labs International. Just to go into a little bit about how the genealogy part of this case was done. DNA Labs is a private forensic lab that's based out of South Florida. Our genealogical process, meaning the process that was used to create this profile that was allowed us to help identify the suspect, is accredited through the ANAB. Around 12 months ago, Sergeant Dave Ellison called me and started talking about this case. There are a lot of steps to go through for a genealogical case to move forward. There's a lot of boxes that have to be checked. Literally, probably 10 minutes into the phone call, I realized that this case was a very good candidate for genealogy and that it needed to be moved forward. I made a few phone calls. I was able to talk to Ashley, and we were able to move this case forward with DNA Labs International. We got a sample from the Indianapolis Marion County Forensic Lab. We took that sample forward using the Intelligence Kit, and we were able to create a genealogical profile. That profile was then downloaded to the approved law enforcement databases, and then our genealogists took over at DNA Labs International. Our genealogists were able to come up with a suspect and with close relatives that matched. So then what we did, we took that information, gave it back to the detectives at IMPD, and they were able to go to those family members, get samples. Those samples were brought back, and in kinship testing, we were able to confirm the original SDR profile that was used out of the case. So basically, you're taking a genealogy, or an SDR profile, which is a normal forensic police profile, which we cannot use in genealogy, and then out of the DNA, we're creating a genealogy profile that can use to move forward in this type of research. Those two swabs were used. We did the kinship testing, and obviously, that's why we're here today. We would be really remiss, obviously, if we didn't talk about these three ladies and their bravery. We'd also be remiss in talking about the detectives, the crime scene personnel, and the laboratory personnel that preserved evidence for over 40 years. I've done this a long time. That's a major win. Someone else who made this happen, Ashley Flowers from Audio Check. I'm just going to pass it on.
Hi everyone, my name is Ashley Flowers. I'm from a local media company called Audio Check. And when we got the call from Steve saying that the issue now, we think we can solve this case, the only issue is funding, it wasn't even a question. We've been committed to our city and specifically to solving unsolved homicides within the city for 6 years now, and we couldn't have written that check faster. So I am grateful that we were given the opportunity to stand up here with everyone else, but truly we played the smallest part in this. The three of you have been fighting since day one. For almost 50 years, you've been fighting and advocating for yourselves. You are the reason we are here, and I think so many people, including myself, are going to look up to you, and your message to survivors is so powerful. So thank you for fighting every day, because I know it wasn't easy. And thank you guys for listening, because it sounds simple, but I've seen a lot of departments not listen. And the work that you guys did behind the scenes is absolutely incredible. Wouldn't be here without you. And I know everyone wishes this could have come sooner. And I think the truth of the matter is the technology wasn't there. And now we have this brand new tech that gives me so much hope that so many other unsolved homicides can be closed out as well. So thank you, everyone.
I'll just close with this. I think Ashley said something there, and Kathy said something that I think needs to be reiterated. There are many families in our community that are seeking justice for their loved ones, that their cases remain unsolved. I hope today gives us all a little bit of hope that those cases remain on our radar, they remain with our unsolved homicide unit, and I would encourage any of you who are listening today who want answers to reach out to our Victim Assistance Unit at 327-3475. 3475. That's our main homicide unit. They will connect you with our victim assistance to try to track down the answers that you need, because these cases never go away, and today is a shining example of that. So I just want to also acknowledge Candace, Sherry, and Catherine, and give them another round of applause. Questions? No questions?
I guess this is for Candace, Sherry, and Catherine. You mind asking or answering anything else? What, if you go to the mic again, what does this mean to you guys?
It means closure for me. I'm at peace now within my heart.
Sorry.
It means closure for me. I'm Candace. It's put peace within my heart, and it also gave justice to my parents and a brother that's passed as well. And I'm a survivor. Thank you.
I think some of the family members are here too. Thank you for being here. I know that you've also been a part of this journey, so thank you.